Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash. Yogi, Miss Naledi Zondi, Miss Aluta Ahambane, Mr. Toki Mohato, Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu, Mr. Kiran Singh, distinguished guests and online viewers. Namaskar and welcome to episode 2 of Uhambo Lwami, My Journey, a series of interactions with legendary contributors to the socio-cultural life in South Africa. Indeed, today in our midst we have two very dynamic, beautiful ladies joining us, and that is Miss Naledi Zondi and Miss Aluta Ahambane, who will be interacting with Mr. Toki Mohato, social activist and author. Just a brief background about Miss Naledi Zondi. Miss Naledi Zondi is the founder and managing director of Naledi Art. She's 25 years old and is a visual artist running her home art studio in Pinetown since the year 2019. She makes art a conventional form of investment amongst the Black community by making art move more accessibly and affordably in the community. She focuses on realism, portraits, and expressionists through her personal exhibitions and collections. She's inspired by African themes such as Black history, culture, African aesthetics, authentic African people, and inspirational Black people. As a self-taught artist, her work can be an example of pursuing art as a career in a possible way of achieving a lifestyle. Custom Naledi artworks can be ordered via her website on social media platforms, and she trades at Naledi_art. And our next guest speaker is also Miss Aluta Ahambane, born on the 30th of May 1987. She is a composer, producer, and photographer from Durban, South Africa. She holds a postgraduate qualification in education and completed her undergraduate or Bachelor of Arts degree from Howard College, University of KwaZulu-Natal. She is also a development specialist and social justice activist, playwright, and media production company owner. Ms. Hambane worked at the Playhouse Company in Durban as a resident vocalist for 6 years. She's also performed with Afrik Umojo and played with band Soul Diggers. Ms. Hambane took part in Idols 2007. She's worked with legendary South African artists such as Busi Mhlongo, Sifiso Nkwena, Judith Sefuma, Ladysmith Black Mamazo, Vicky Sampson, Abigail Kubeka, Duma Kandlovo, just to name a few. So sit back, relax as we take you down this incredible journey with Miss Naledi Zondi and Miss Aluta Hambane interacting with Mr. Toki Mohato on episode 2 of Uhambo Lwami, My Journey.
Welcome to yet another edition of Uhambo Lwami, My Journey. This is the second episode, and I'm hosting Miss Aluta Hambane to my left, as well as Naledi Zondi to my far left. My name is Toki Mohato, and I'll be your host. Without any further ado, welcome to the episode, and how are you today?
Well, I'm really good. I speak so for myself. I don't know about you. Whoop whoop. I'm awesome.
Great stuff. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. And as you may be aware, we normally profile legendary contributors to the social cultural landscape of South Africa, but most importantly, expose your artistic flair to the global community. So without any further ado, let me just quickly zoom in. Can you narrate for us a few glimpses of your life?
So, just basically, I am a 25-year-old visual artist. I'm self-taught. I didn't study visual arts in varsity. So I studied retail business management at the University of Durban. So I wanted to study art, but coming from a Black family, especially if you were, in the top 10 or top 15 in high school, the teachers always advise our parents that you should study something that's more academic where you can get a job. And they advised me, okay, study something academic. So I did retail business management at DUT. But after graduating in 2019, you know, when you're waiting to graduate, have your ceremony.
Yes, yes.
So I wasn't working or anything. So I decided, let me volunteer and do something, you know. So I wanted to volunteer for an NPO, and I was just searching and looking. So I met with Uhambo. He is a social entrepreneur. And then he told me that, okay, before you volunteer, what can you do? Like, what skills do you have? What do you know? And off the top of my head, I just said, I can draw. He's like, really? He's like, really? And I'm like, yes. And then he was like, okay, show me. So I showed him like work that I used to do in high school and stuff that I used to do just to calm myself in varsity, because it was, you know, studying something that you don't want. You need to keep yourself towards yourself. So I showed him that, and he was like, yes, this is your ticket to success. And he said, use your name as your company name and just run with it. And I was like, I don't know, nobody knows me, nobody knows what I do. I last did my arts in varsity, I'm not sure if I can still do it. And he said, do a portrait of a specific person, and then we'll send it to that person as a gift, and then we'll take it from there. So I did a painting of of the Parks and Recreation.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So then I gifted him, because it was just his birthday, like recently. He was so amazed. And he was just like, this is incredible. And I was like, really? He said, yes. So then I was the speaker for Articulate Africa. So I was speaking for the Durban Art Gallery, and how artists that did not study art can still succeed in the arts. And because it's something that I wanted to do and it was my passion, I was driven by the passion and the need to be in the industry to show other people that I can do it. So it's not about the money for me specifically. So my journey is specifically just to show other artists, especially female artists, that you can succeed in the art industry without studying art, just off your own talent and your God-given gift, and just working on it every year. So now I see that everything that has happened to me within it's 1.5 years or so, it's just God showing me that this is the path that you're supposed to take, because everything has just flying. I don't want to lie. So that's just me in a nutshell, and my journey specifically in art.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Okay. My journey, I come from a very artistic family. My grandparents were all musicians in Mozambique, and currently my aunt is considered one of the biggest musicians in Mozambique, Lisa James. So I've always grown up in that space of artists and artistry. And I was exposed to it from an earlier stage, where I was at the backstage of every show. I mean, like literally every show as a child. And I somewhat grew up developing this passion. Surprisingly enough, I grew up with my mom and dad. When they split, I had to live with my mom. And when I finished and then at school, I pursued art. I was a performer, I was performing for municipality, doing a whole lot of gigs, etc. from primary school. But then surprisingly, when I got to university, my mom said, this is not a viable industry to go into. And I literally rebelled to a point that I had to relocate to Johannesburg on my own and start my new life alone. Like, I saved up some money and I moved to Johannesburg, and I started this arts thing, and it worked there and there. But the most beautiful thing is that was my biggest awakening of the traps that exist within the arts industry, because we did shows but we were not paid. At the Market Theatre, in different spaces, we were totally abused as artists. Came back at Durban, then finished my degree, and then, you know, because I'd already built a network of artists around me, like from across all disciplinaries, for me, it was just a matter of just jumping in here and there. And then that's where the journey began of cross-pollinating and collaborations with different artists and art forms. Because I mean, I did radio, I did photography, I wrote, I acted, I am a musician. And it kind of became, I was a teacher, and it kind of became a canvas from which to say, hey, so it's been a very, very crazy, rocky journey. Like super rocky and fun.
Most definitely. And with your stories, there's a similar thread of parental disapproval and an inner yearning forcing or compelling you to go at it alone because it's your gift ultimately, right? But how does that then become your inspiration, both internally and externally, as you pursue artistic expression?
The reality is that we're coming from a historical past where subconsciously and, Black people aren't exposed to the arts. They do not understand the power within the arts. In the first world countries, because they're so developed and the economies are so developed, arts is one of those mediums which is so valued. But here we're worried about survival. And it only kind of makes sense why our parents are concerned with the fact that when we get into spaces and say we're going to be artists, it raises bells because now they're not aware of these industries, because predominantly, if you go into the arts world, the people who are really making money in the arts world, and this is realistically speaking, here in South Africa, there's majority white people. They are the producers, they are the directors of companies. Whereas for us, it's a passion because now it evokes a certain emotional kind of thing within ourselves. So the inspiration in art for me, I'm a soul person, I'm a spiritual person. I don't look at art as something that is a commodity, but I look at art as something that is as an expression, a reflection, a documentation of a certain period and kind of socialization of the time. So really what really does inspire me is the ability to be moved by art. So perhaps in a sense we are taking for granted the power of art and the value it has on our socio-conscious level. Yeah?
I think one thing we need to remember is that for our parents, it's not really their fault.
Yeah.
Because even in high school, if a learner is not good at academics, no one will ever look at what else can they do. So in other schools, especially overseas, parents will look at their children and say, okay, this child is not academically gifted. So when they leave high school, they won't force them to go to varsity. They'll take the money that they were going to use for varsity and cultivate the skill. So if they can do art, they'll open a studio for them and they'll try find clients for them, and then they'll cultivate the skill. In our world, if you do not know academics, you are just, everyone gives up on you and you don't know what you need to do with yourself. So I think for us, we are the people now that are changing the narrative, because we have the willpower to do what our parents want and still go in our own journeys. Because I studied what my parents wanted me to study, but I still did art, and I'm going in the journey where they wanted me to do art, but they saw the reality of what's happening now, and they were like, go to varsity so that you can have a backup plan. So they didn't say no, it was because of the circumstances. So we need to understand that we are the people that are supposed to change the narrative. So now there are students that look at me and parents that look at me and say, okay, you can study what you want because Naledi can do it.
Yes.
So we are the people that are supposed to make things easier and make people understand, because people won't understand what they don't know. So if there are examples of people that are succeeding in the art industry, as Black people, our Black parents can say, there's a Black person who's succeeding, then you have my blessing that you can go forth and they can guide you as well. So I think that's where the inspiration comes in for us now.
If you now are as prolific as you've painted the picture of artists as, what then determines success or satisfaction in an artist? Is it quality or is it popularity?
I love that question. I actually had to sit down and say, popularity is quite often driven, especially in this era, by consumerism and capitalism. And that is a very narrow, kind of one-sided, one person wanting to, a person is greedy. When it comes to the arts, and again, it kind of really contradicts itself, because if you're looking at economics and you're looking at the principles of scarcity, scarcity deals with quality, and popularity deals with the former, So for me, when something is of quality, it has more depth. And if something has depth, that's why, for people like us, the Thanjiswa Maswais, the Simpiwe Danas, they aren't as popular. You don't see them having 4 million followers because they're dealing with consciousness things that could possibly be waking people up to say, hey, the reality is that usahlala emjondolo, kodwa uhlala in a country where abantu badla imali yakho, where you are paying taxes. Why aren't you waking up? For me, I would definitely say popular is not really it. We still look at Abu Huma Sigel and Abu Muslim Shonga and see them as heroes, but we don't see Abu Maporisa as heroes because Kona Indima Abayidala to move society forward. And we all have a moral responsibility to use our arts as a medium for which to advance society.
Unfortunately, for my generation now, we live in a world where social media is king. So I can have the best art skills. I can do Renaissance art, super realism, where I can paint you as you are, and it looks like you're about to breathe in that frame. And still, no one will recognize my art because I'm not popular on social media. And that is just the reality. So how we work now is that you find your place on social media and in society and you become popular, and then only you tap into the skill and the quality of your work. So if people don't know who you are, they don't care about how much quality you produce or what kind of art you make. It doesn't matter. Because another thing is we don't have access to the people that can tell us if our work is quality. I've never met an art critic. I have exhibited, I've been to many spaces, I've sent my work to many people, but no one will ever tell me that, okay, this is the technique you're supposed to be using, or I just haven't had access to those type of people, so we don't even know what quality is. So we just base our work on popularity, and that's how we reach masses. So for me, because I'm an artist trying to live a life that's supposed to empower other people, I need to be popular in order to reach my agenda. So that's the problem that we are facing now, and that's why a lot of people are not lasting in the art industry, because you train for 2 years, and then because the quality is not there, then we don't see you after those 2 years.
That raises a question in my head. If we're now speaking of social media and technology, and obviously everyone is hyping up about the 4th Industrial Revolution, right? But is that affecting how people understand, interpret, value, and appreciate art as well?
When you become the trendsetter, you then position yourself with your quality and your craft to be the trailblazer in whatever you're doing, and then in essence, you become the custodian, and you become, I mean, if you're looking at about Marxism and your Charles Darwin and about all these great writers, they were the premise for a lot of scientific and technological advancements that we are now building upon. So if we are going to be going with the popular, we are basically not saying we are creating stuff that is new, but we are then now saying we are just creating what people want. But what people want is not really what they want, it's what they've been brainwashed to think that they want, because the media is highly populated and controlled by a few people. So everything that everyone consumes is in essence mediated. So how are we then reflecting society? I think for me we need to get to the point where we get to the core understanding of what does art mean to me.
For art, there was a certain race that dominated in the art industry. So they had a chance to pick what is, better. So they hit jackpots and they're like, yo, this is great, we're gonna take it and we're gonna make it our own thing. So by the time we realize that there's actually money in this and that we can actually do it, we have the skill, it was kind of too late in a way. So it's only like rediscovering art now. And what's happened in my generation is that everyone's like, oh, I can do art, okay, and then everyone goes and flocks to do art. Then there's digital art, because you need a laptop to do that. So I can go to varsity and I can study that. So now we're all digital artists, and now it's overconsumed, and someone will look at a digital portrait and buy the digital portrait because it's easier to make a person look exactly like themselves on a computer, rather than me sitting at home for 24 hours sitting and painting this person to look exactly like they are. So it's overconsumed because we have the ways that things are done now are different from before. Before, an artist would be judged on the skill that they have and
Yes,
creating new techniques. We don't create new techniques. We just rely on the basics, and you do what sells, you go with what customers want at that time. So I've noticed with my career, I had to start with creating portraits because that's what the market wanted. So I would paint people because people love themselves and people want to give their family members and they want to see themselves on the walls, and that's what I have to do, because if I don't do that, nobody wants to buy an artwork of a lady exploring her feelings because they don't care.
How influence does a specific art genre play in as far as inspiring us as artists to reach a particular outcome?
I think I'll be honest with you. We are all gifted. Our senses are not the same. Yeah? Somebody might come into a gallery and look at that piece of incredible India and look at the sky and look at the tones of that sky and look at the texture of it and then be moved by it because their sight is more developed than their hearing. That's why some people are tone deaf. Like when they listen to a song, they start on another key because that kind of is not developed so much. So there is no one particular art form which supersedes the other. They all share a space in how we are unique as people. Yeah? Like for instance, I only started understanding visual arts when I was at university and when I was teaching visual arts as part of the component of creative arts. Oh, there's texture, there's tone, there's shading. Those are the things that previously I would not look at. I would literally go into an art gallery and I'd be like, okay, yeah. I literally understood photography when I started understanding composure and aperture and depth of field. But those are concepts that I did not know prior to me being exposed to the semantics and the paradigm or of that kind of aesthetic and art. It's similar to music, it's similar to dance.
No, I think how we tackle that, especially as artists that create paintings and so forth, how you tackle that is that you use you. So if you tell your story and you're relatable, it doesn't matter which art form you use because people understand you and the journey that you're going through. Because as an artist, sometimes, maybe for now, I want to focus on just realism and portraiture. And then a year later, I learned a new skill and then I decide, no, I want to be a musician now. Because people know me and who I am, they understand that Naledi is good in different disciplinaries and she can, evolve into something else. People will move with whatever you want to do at that time. Like how you said that you do many different things and you still have the same audience because people know you and your journey. So if people understand you and you are relatable and you have your market, whatever type of art, people will take the time to decipher and try to understand why did Naledi use red and blue in this image, Understanding Naledi, she did say that red stands for anger and, and fighting with yourself within. So then you start to understand the artwork and what Naledi was going through. So it doesn't matter what type of artwork that I create. But if you understand me and my journey and me as an artist, then you are able to take in any art that I produce. So that's how I think that we navigate in that kind of field.
And the show is over. How would you inspire aspirant artists? Because again, we spoke about how in certain families, right, art is not even known, never mind appreciated to a point where a parent can encourage a child to go and pursue art. There's a child who's artistically inclined or gifted and they want to pursue art. How would you, as established artists, inspire those kids?
Firstly, I have a problem with established artists because I don't understand what it means. Perhaps you might want to unpack it.
No problem. Okay, so established in my case won't necessarily be quote unquote someone we call a legend or an icon, right?
Yeah.
It is Utoki, who's a self-taught author who decided at some point, I want to write something about an issue that affected me so much.
Yeah.
And I feel that the world needs to see my perspective because I met her. He started writing, learned about publishing, self-published, and decided not to popularize the work because it's my work, and the work should speak for itself. So I'm an established artist in that sense.
I love that. Because we have to be, I mean, semantics is a problem because my understanding could be something else. I would say, you know, I love, we're still doing projects where we go into schools and we buy disposable cameras and we go to primary schools with Professor Moholi and we teach girls to take photographs because people don't understand the power of a photo.
Yes,
yeah,
that's true.
So what I would say to young upcoming people is that art is yours, and you should not view art through the lens of us established people or people who are out there. Use inspirations, like I said earlier on, that when I compose my music, I look at everybody who has inspired me. When I listen to Busim Mhlongo, I loved her. I listened to about Judith Sipuma, Lady Smith Pambazo. I've taken all of them and I've created Aluta Humbane with all those influences. Don't go and be another Toki Mohol. We've already got a Toki Mohol. We've already got an Aluta Humbane. But who are you? Because quite often, similarly with relationships, similarly with anything, we resonate when something is real. And we disconnect spiritually, emotionally when something is not real. That's why you find that what is popular fades fast because it's not really, it's created to sell a certain ideology. Now, when you see that ideology, it's like, oh, fun, the euphoria is like, whoop! And then you come back home to Mjondolo wako on a single bed and then and then you're like, how? But that give on with TV in South Africa, so and then you then start coming back to reality. So what I would say to upcoming artists is that really you need to get to the core of who you are. And regardless of what anybody says, I promise you, when my mom said I couldn't study arts, it destroyed me. I became toxic. I moved to Joburg. I started drinking. I smoked weed. I did all the things that were rebellious to certain. Like I had to come back to Durban after alcohol poisoning because I nearly died because it killed me. But when I came back, and I think I did right, because that's the point where they realized it was okay. We're gonna have to fund this dream, otherwise we're losing this person. Because the arts is an extension of your soul. And if somebody, it's like somebody taking the oxygen away from you but expecting you to survive, it's very difficult, you know. So regardless of where you're coming from, you don't have to say we're coming from Gamashu, and then you're gonna start speaking about, and you're gonna shoot videos like you come with them and not. No, speak about your Gamashu situation, because you're not the only one who's coming from a background where it's impoverished, and you shouldn't be shy about that, because you are then speaking up for the masses which are unable to speak. And remember, when we produce these artworks, sometimes it's not about us. When I released Lwami in 2017, every newspaper wrote about it, every radio station covered it because of the subject matter. How dare you speak about loving a man on such a platform? Like it was literally, I remember Ukhoz was like, Aluta, and I'm like, okay, so I've touched things that people are unable to speak about.
You're essentially a social engineer.
Yeah, but there's so many issues where mama bayahlukumezwa ekhaya mama hlala thule. Kube khona imama osukuma yakhuluma ngokuhlukumeza kwakhe athinteka hileke. Because ukuhlumeza kwaleyo mama ukuhlumeza kweingane, because manje ngiyasayikhulisa kahle lezi ingane ngenxa yokuthi kwayena uhlukumezekile ekhaya. So if engakhulumi, it means that sikhanda i-generation yabantu abazobe behlukumezekile. And then when you find ukuthi labantu ba-dysfunctional within the house, abasakwazi nokuthi ba-contribute and build legacies, because now if uhlukumezekile uzosithola kanjani isikhathi sokucabanga inqubekela phambili, uzocabanga lokhu uhlukumeze consume, and then uzale iy'ngane nazo zifakwe in the same situation, and you're building generation of a culture which is not going to make people succeed. So remember again, whenever you release that song, whenever you write that artwork, it has so much of power when somebody consumes it. And I would rather say, I'd rather be part of a society where I'm building people and liberating people than to imprison people, because I promise you, I will not sleep well at night knowing that umsebenzi wami u-influence ingane ebi-right ibi-virgin ukuthi ihambe iyolala naloya mfana ngoba nakho leya mfana uyitshengisa a glamorous life. And mina lokho ngikuthathe ngakufaka music video ukuthi mawuyintombazane ufuna ukugqoka into eyimfishane uyiveze uyidayise khona amadoda ezokuthanda, because leyo ndoda ayithandi wena but ithanda lento oyidayisayo, and lento oyidayisayo mesifeda mesubhuka then uzobe ususele nani izobe siku-abuse siku-replace, and awunalutho lapho because vele uzinikele wena ne-freedom yakho at a very early stage. So we have a moral responsibility to society to reflect honestly what we see, yeah? And it can be glamorous. That doesn't mean it should be about poverty and about pain. It can also be about happiness and love and joy, because that kind of makes up what society is about. Yeah?
Yeah, I think one thing that we have to also highlight, if you're inspiring artists, you have to highlight that the artist's life is not glamorous. The artist's life is not glamorous. Being an artist is hard. One thing about art money, by the time you get it, you have worked your ass off.
And your brief got bills.
Exactly. By the time that money hits your account, you don't even feel it. You feel like you've undercharged because it takes so much time and energy to even, get that done. So what people usually do when they hire an artist, they'll pay them in full because they trust your work and everything. Then you have the money is in your account and you use it, and then now the artwork is still waiting for you. So one thing we have to remind young people is that art money is hard to get. The art life is not glamorous. Yes, you go to shows and we see you, and as you can see, I love dressing up and I like looking good, and that's who I am, and I'll do that any day. But it doesn't mean that that's the life every day, because the moment I walk out of here and I get home, I'm gonna take all of this off and I have a mural to do and I'm gonna look horrible creating something beautiful. And that's the life. 90% of the time, you're struggling, you're stressed, this work is there for you and no one else. You can't delegate your artwork. It's all there looking at you. And sometimes we forget that art is a calling. You can't just do art. You can't just be an artist. It's a calling because you are a martyr and you are sacrificing yourself to document things that are happening in your society at that time, because your art has to live, more than you do. It has to surpass you. When you die, your art lives on. So whatever you create now, it has to resonate with society and capture the life that you guys are living now. So when you see the work that came before us, it shows us how life was then. So we have a duty and a responsibility to capture life now, so that when we are no longer around, that is, it's a frozen moment of what life was in our generation. So some people go into art because they think it's fun, it's nice, and it's glamorous, but it's such a huge responsibility because you can't get it wrong. You can't get it wrong, because now you are disappointing people who rely on this, who rely. Social media will get things wrong. They'll tell us what we want to hear and what they want people to hear, but you can't tell an artist to create an artwork that will give people the wrong information. Sure. Because it's your calling and it's your duty, and it's coming from within you. And if you don't create this artwork, you will die inside. So you can trust art to be correct. Yes. Because that's what someone is living, it's their reality. And so I don't want people to go into art because it's glamorous and they hit the jackpot, that this is an industry that it's only developing now, so there's so much money in art. There's so much money, you just have to find it, and you just have to be honest with yourself and decide that this is the sacrifice that I'm going to make, not for money, but for documenting the life that we're living now.
James Cameron, the producer of both Titanic and Avatar,
Yes.
had to wait for about 10 years before Avatar was produced.
Hmm.
And he said, I'm not willing to be forced by society to produce and release. Technology and society is not ready for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he waited for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually when Avatar came out, almost everyone went gaga about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes back to the ideal notion of artists or creators being social engineers.
Mm.
And the question would be, do artists really accept and value the idea of being social engineers?
It's a very big responsibility.
Mm.
Because now again it goes back to the thing you should that you have to be able to separate your personal life from your work. Because personally I'm flawed. I'm flawed. I have my mistakes. I can speak about gender-based violence and I find myself in a position where I'm in a situation where I'm implicated or perpetuating indirectly. But subconsciously, I'm against it. So when you separate the personal from your work, it then begins to say, as a social engineer, if you create that building, you have to go through so many tests and all of that to ensure that it's safe for people to live in. Yeah? So we have to think about the implications of your work and your actions in relations to that. Yes, sometimes it's very difficult because it's like, again, I'm contradicting myself to a certain degree because now we have to eat. Yeah, but people enjoy what is, fake and what is an illusion. So, and again, it goes back to know your conscience and your soul to say, what does your conscience say about you and your work? Does your conscience say you're going to be advocating for good, or you're going to be advocating to say, hey, yeah, I'm adding to the pile which destroys the world? They speak about the Illuminatis and all of that, which are all concepts that existed that are misinterpreted now, but they're still very relevant. It's it's about controlling the world in a certain way for economic gains. Yeah, so are you one of those people who are going to say, I'm going to sell my mother, I'm going to sell my cousin, I'm going to sell everybody in my family so that I can have money? Funa ubuze lowo mbuzo ukuthi uzodayisa yonke into like people who have fought for just because wena ufuna imali azikho ezinye indlela. Because remember again, and like this is coming from a spiritual perspective, unfortunately you become part of the lineage or lawa madlozi where usazoshona nawe ube idlozi usayodibana nawe. And you've already sold them on this plane for all the work that they've done towards advancing humanity by how you use amandla. Because remember, art is a gift. So you have been given isipho. And when Uhambo ukhohlisa abantu so that when uzolala, not udlile. It's okay if ulala udlile. But some people are living very affluent lives, having a Lamborghini. They can't even drive a Lamborghini in the South African road because the rules and laws does not allow for certain speeds. So it's really a matter of greed. It's a matter of a moral decay that needs to be addressed. But again, I'm not the person to judge people. I've got my own flaws. Personally, I'm developing myself to be the best that I can and represent who I am through my work. Yeah.
No, I think that's so valid because when it comes to art, for me personally, I chose that my journey is supposed to inspire other people. So like with the exhibition that I'm working on now, I have a responsibility to change the narrative and the mindset of my audience. So I'm working on an exhibition where I will be working with photographers. So a photographer will give me a photo that they took, and then I'm going to create an artwork from that. Because remember that before, an artist would sit and watch and look at someone and then paint them. But now, artists rely on photography in order to create art. So we have to highlight the importance of photography and help customers who want to use art, photographers understand that you need to pay. There's value there. So we are changing the narrative, not just for myself, but for photography as a whole, because now we are teaching people the value of photographs. Like you said, that when someone buys your music, they have to remember that it's your whole life.
Yeah.
So a photographer goes to varsity, studies that, and then they learn a new photography style, or they work on the kind of, so the artistic, artistic aesthetic or whatnot. So when you buy that and you say you only have 100 rand, you can't do that, because photography is an art as well. So I'm taking my art audience that already understands the value of art, taking it over to photography, and now we are changing mindsets, and that's a huge responsibility, and that's how you inspire, and that's how you remember that art is a tool to teach as well, because now you're teaching a new mindset, and you don't need to scream at people and shout at them for them to understand a new concept. Bring in a few photographers bring in a few photographers in a gallery, put a price on it, put art next to it, and then now they're confused. They're like, okay, photography in an art gallery, so it means that it's art, and then now they're forced to listen to the photographer and how they created this photo, and now that it's art. So as an artist, we have a responsibility to change mindsets, and it's kind of like a religion in a way, because then once I teach you something, you can't tell someone they can't be Muslim if they were Muslim. You can't change them. It takes a long time. So when you teach people through art, that's something so deep, because you use their spirituality, you use their academics, you use their mindsets and what they believe in order for them to understand art. So when you inspire people, you don't only touch their their visual senses, you also touch their beliefs, their culture, and all these things. So that's how you inspire people, and that's how you have a huge responsibility, because now you're changing a mindset. When I was doing my exhibition, there were lots of students who do art as a subject in high school. And them walking into the gallery and seeing the art, they decided that I want to study art in varsity. You have changed someone's path forever, because you can't take back those 4 years that they're going to spend studying visual art, because now they've walked in, they've changed their mind that I'm going to go against my parents telling me to study engineering and I'm going to study art. For the next 4 years, I'm going to spend over 100,000 rand studying art. Do you get me? So that's changing. That's a huge responsibility, and that's one thing that we have to remember, that when you're using art, we can't just use it anyhow, because you're changing people's lives, and you're messing with people's lives basically, because now that parent is angry that this naledi changed my child's mind, So I think that's really important.
As we're about to wrap up, the question is, has your popularity made consumption of your artworks easier, and has it to a degree affected your spiritual composition?
I would say, again, remember when we produce or create bodies of work, there's certain people who can comprehend that work. So it's not really everybody who would listen to my song who would be like, okay, I resonate with this. But it's a niche market. And within that niche market, it has resonated. I was speaking to my, when you're driving KLT, I was doing this body of work, Makawe, and I mentioned some heroes, African black heroes, because mine is about developing ours. I'm strongly based on the people who are marginalized. And I'm not saying, when I say African, I don't mean like black only. I have Indians there, like Mrs. Suri Reddy, who was my teacher for drama, who's my godmother, who's everything to me. Like whenever I need help, she's there. She at a certain point she played a role bigger than my mom's. And I reached out to Sbongile Kumar. I was like, Mama Sbongile, I want to do and remember, I mean, this is this Sbongile Kumar. Like,
yes.
And when I reached out, when you're reaching out to somebody and you've never reached out before, you're expecting to be like, who are you? What's up? And I was met with such indifference. She was like, Aluta, wow, I'm so impressed by your work. When are we shooting? And I'm like, what? Like, hey, make it difficult. I'm used to the difficulty.
Yes.
Like, make it harder. So the popularity has, in essence, kind of really did open some gates. But majority for me, it's not like, for me, I'm known predominantly by people who are creators more than people who are consumers. Because there's this tendency amongst the creatives to be competitive.
Yes.
So they're always studying what you're doing in relation to themselves. So in essence, we mirror each other. As I spoke earlier on, that I have my influences of the people who have predated. Quite often I go to the core. I go to the Rachel Ferrer, I go to the old people because that's where the roots are. The new people are in adaptation from there. So the popularity kind of has helped mediate how my work is seen. With regards to consumption, I honestly create work that will be understood as, again, my work is ahead of its time. Just like Abu, like, you know, I don't know if you know Angelique Kidjo. Yes. Have you seen Angelique Kidjo's music videos?
Yeah.
That's like postmodern videos with the sounds. I'm like, and when I look at it now with the lens of academia, I'm like, I knew Angelique Kidjo when I was a child, and I didn't understand this kind of Eastern and the videos which are so I'm a graphics of not like technologically advanced. The sound, the strings, it's things that you're hearing, and I'm like, okay, now I understand when you are ahead of your time. So I should not really be up in arms when the popular masses do not consume my work, because it's not yet my time for them to understand my work. But people who are within the arts field understand me with, okay, we see you. We see you.
Yeah, I think for me personally, in my generation, usually what happens is you have to be pretty or dress a certain way, and then only people, you know, give you attention. Then only they say, oh, she's an artist. Oh, the artist is nice. But before, they would have only focused on your looks and all these things. So we have to fight that first, because sometimes you'll meet a client, or a client will want to meet with you, maybe a male, and they don't want the arts, they want you. So you get there, and now your work,
subject.
you know, you're the subject now, and it's really annoying, because now my art is my life. So now you're disturbing my mojo. Now I have to like try and work around you and your greed and whatnot, you know, and lust. So it's for us. There are so many elements that we fight, and I don't want to say that those things don't help. Like being popular in our generation, it's so important to many people. How many followers you have?
Yes.
How many followers you have can get you brands. You can get sponsorship. So it's easier if more people know about you, because a lot of people can vouch for you. And if you know a lot of people, there are many references. So someone will say that I saw your art from a person in Cape Town, where I'm not there, you know. So your popularity goes where you can't go. So it's very important to acknowledge the power that it has, and that it does help, especially if you're trying to, you know, influence people to love art and understand it and learn about it. It's important to be popular. But then how you are popular also matters, because popularity, if you're popular because you're pretty, what if you wake up the next day and your skin is just skinky and then you're no longer pretty, so then it doesn't count. So as artists, we try to be popular because of our work, because then I don't have to involve myself. I don't have to put as much effort into thinking, oh, what do I look like, you know, how do I feel, because then the work does all of that for me. So it's important for us to narrow down on why we are popular.
Mm.
What are you popular for? For me, a lot of people don't know my face, but they know Naledi art. So when I walk around and they see the necklace, they're like, oh, I know this brand. You're Naledi. Oh, you're Naledi. So I'm like, yes, that's what I want.
Yeah.
The work must go where I don't go, you know? So by the time I get to that place, it's easier for me to say, I want to do a show in Eastern Cape. Then I get to Eastern Cape and someone's like, can you come to my gallery? And then someone else, no, come to my gallery, because now the name has already created a space of acceptance. So when you're popular, try to be popular for your work and not for you. Because as an artist, you can have an artist block where you are unable to create any art. Because now, if you're popular because you're always doing something and you're always posting new work, what if you can't create new work? That one exhibition you did is supposed to last you for at least 3 years because it was so amazing. But if you're posting work just to say, I'm posting, all you ever get is likes.
Yeah.
True.
No one will ever buy the work because, okay, you posted that, we're over it now, what's the next thing you're going to do? People never see the value, they just want to anticipate that, oh, you're creating art every day, you're posting all the time. And you're popular because of you and how you feel. I'm popular because I always post new work. But nobody wants the work. Nobody wants it. You never post soul. It's always the next beautiful picture or whatever. So, sure, it's so important. You can have so many followers and you still can't afford to buy a car. You still can't afford to do your hair. You're struggling. But people don't see the struggle. They don't understand the struggle. And one thing we have to remember about popularity is that if I am popular because I have expensive art, right, and I have a lot of money, when I don't have the money anymore, people still see that Naledi.
Yes.
They'll never migrate to saying, okay, Naledi doesn't have money now, we have to buy her art in order to put her back to that position. No. Instead, if they see me in a taxi when I was driving, they'll be like, what happened? How is she in a taxi now? They'll never think.
Is that the
Naledi art. They'll never think that let's buy Naledi's art because Naledi's struggling now, and it's our fault because we are the consumers and she's creating art for us. She's sacrificed so much to be in this art industry. So being popular, you need to have people that care about you and your journey and want to see you succeed. People always push. If there's something bad happens to you, people repost and they'll retweet. But if something good happens to you, they'll keep quiet. Yes, they'll be like, oh, okay, good for you. So yeah.
I when you speak about this, I'm looking at the juxtaposition of Lady Gaga and Sia. With Lady Gaga, because I part of my life is actually I look into other people's life and I'm inspired by that because it becomes the blueprint from which you can learn so much. When Lady Gaga was singing, she's an exceptional singer. She sang at this pub for so long. But one night, she decided, when nobody paid attention to her, one night she decided to play and sing naked. And all of a sudden, then Sia, on the other hand, is always blocking her, but she's popular. This goes to the point where we say now, as an artist, and perhaps we need, and it's going to go back a bit to this established artist. Because for me, I think being established is when I reach my epitome of saying I mastered what I'm doing. You may say, what a wonderful music, what wonderful photography, but I'll be like, no, I'm still developing myself. And up until you get to that point, you are still growing. When you reach that point of growth, you have to get to a point where now you understand that you can then turn this into a business. And just like any other business, you get into affiliates and you affiliate yourself with other businesses. So get an agent. Like, I don't think Prof Maholi would be so big internationally if they did not have an agent such as Stevenson Arts Gallery, etc., which is able to pitch them on an international scale. So now it becomes a matter of scaling yourself. But it starts with you being ready. Because quite often I'm still a critic of my own work because I feel like I'm also evolving and I'm still finding myself. And the journey to self-discovery is one that is unending. And I'm sad because I've had to transition all my life in terms of surnames and transitions through genders all my life to a point where I have not reached my destination. And I'm in a position whereby I wake up one day, I'm like, who is this Aluta that everyone is speaking about? You know? And sometimes I don't even want to be seen in public because it's like when people see me, they see this person that I do not see as myself because I'm still on a social dilemma and a psychological dilemma of myself. I get to spaces where I go out at night and be like, are you Aluta? I'm like, yeah, I'm Aluta. And I'll be like, oh, I listened to that song. I love your song. And I just get to a point like, okay, how do I respond? Okay, you love it. And I'm tempted to say, what do you love about it? Because now I want to understand, are you getting what I intended to do? But then again, a conscious voice says in my mind, when you create work, yes, you create it with a vision. But when people consume work, they consume it however they want to. Yeah?
Concluding remark, what is your estimation of the current artistic landscape in South Africa, and is it export worthy?
Yes, 200%. Because remember, we are leaders in our own niche. We are, like, if you take the Tandisomazwais, if you take Utamagwini, if you take people, we must not be measuring ourselves to so-called international standards, because the international standards as well now is premised on its own kind of barometer. If you take Kunio to say Wozotuli Maskandi, come and sing Maskandi, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So why are we going to say our work in 702 is not important, or it is not on an international stage, whereas it has deep meaning for us? Because I think meaning is supposed to be mediated and understood by us so that other people can understand. On an economic level, I feel like there still needs to be more that needs to be done within the different cultural embassies to link up artists so that there is a sharing of works, one that does not discriminate on the work itself.
If our own people consume what we create, then we have a market we can rely on. Because sometimes people want to say that success is when Americans or the UK or the world consumes your work. So once you go international, then you're successful.
Yes.
Some people are successful overseas, but their own people don't know them. So they don't have anyone to go back to. Exactly. So when you get here, nobody cares, you know, so then you don't know whether you're successful or not, you know. And another thing is that we shouldn't be afraid to package our own creations. So you know how Dr. Esther Matambu.
Oh yes.
So the type of art she creates has been there for years.
Yes.
The Ndebele artists, we know it, we understand it, and we didn't see the value in it until people from overseas were like, wow, this lady, she's doing something amazing, you know, and then she started painting on a Mercedes-Benz, on alcohol. Then only we were like, oh, this is amazing, because we don't see the value in the art that we have. And what's beautiful about South Africa is that we are so creative. We, in 2020, we created a whole new music genre, which is Amapiano.
Yeah.
When last did America come up with something new? A new music genre. And then now they're taking our music and
fusing it with their own. And they're collaborating with us.
Yes, one thing we have to remember is that many countries develop things from Africa. The basis of most of the things that they do is from us, because we're sleeping on what we have. You know, gold is taken from here and created into products and then sold 2 times, 3 times, 10 times the amount back to us. Because we don't have the resources to create products from the resources that we have, you know. So as Africans, we have to start packaging what we have and our talents and then selling it. Not waiting for someone from outside to see the value in us. Take it, rebrand it, and sell it back to us.
Viewers as well would attest to the fact that South Africa obviously abounds in creativity. And you've heard from the two artists, creatives rather, how most of the things that we speak about are realities that we know about but have not fully explored. And there's so much still yet to be done for artists or creative in South Africa. And this has been another edition or episode rather of Uhambo Lwami, my journey. And I was in conversation with artist extraordinaire Aluta Humbane as well as Naledi Zondi. I almost said Notando Zondi. Naledi Zondi. And I'll hand over for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much to Mr. Toki Mahoto and Ms. Naledi Zondi and Ms. Aluta Hambane for sharing this very artistic, interesting journey with us. With that, we've come to the conclusion of episode 2 of Uhambo Lwami, My Journey, a series of interactions with legendary contributors to the social cultural life in South Africa. I'd like to introduce Mr. Sipiwe Mchunu from the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at the Consulate General of India in Durban to render this afternoon's vote of thanks.
Thank you very much for the interview that was conducted by Toki Mohoto G. What I've learned in this interview, as a parent, there was a thinking in me, that what I'm doing to my kids, am I doing justice or am I doing injustice to them? Because we as parents, sometimes we are so overprotecting. As Mrs. Nalini had said that earlier on, she studied something and then later she followed her journey. So there was a question in me whether what my daughters at home are doing, it is their choice or they're doing for the sake of making the parents happy. So I've learned. So I think now, I have to open a dialogue at home.
Yes.
Whereby I would sit down with them so that they will just cough it out, tell me this is what we want. Because I think now what is happening to Cisnarity's life, it is powerful, So I've learned it. So thank you very much for the interview. It was very interesting. I heard you, Sis Aluta. The name says a lot. It says a lot, and I am sure if we have people like you next to the upcoming artist, they will go places. And I believe Sis Nalini today, she learned lots of things. Because she has a passion, but that passion needs to be nurtured. And then she will go places. If she can use whatever you mentioned today, I see her future bright. And in our country also, there is this problem that all the artists are having. That whenever there is a demise of somebody, that journey is gone. But if you go to other African countries, like if you go to Cape Verde, Cesare Evora is gone, but Lura is there.
Yes.
Andriano Conglave's banner is gone, but there is somebody who is there, Dito Perry. The betting is always going on and on and on. In South Africa, we are battling to replace Brenda Fassie.
Yes. True.
She died many years ago, but still we do not have a proper replacement. It means now somewhere, somehow, there is a problem. And it is not a small problem, it is just a bigger problem. Industrial scale problem, whereby we need people now to work very hard. Because if you go to Zimbabwe, you have Domsani Maraire. He is there. You got Chanisa, she is there. Chuki is there. Chuki demised long time, but Metri is there. The light is still on and on. But in South Africa now, Busi is gone. And who is replacing Busi? But when we have people like Aluta, we know that one day, but it is there, it needs a good groundwork to promote this type of artist. To promote this work, you need Sisi to work very hard because we are there, we like, but we like what people doesn't like. That is very unfortunate, So the future is bright with Sisona Lady. Yes, Mama Slamo, she's there, but we know now we have our own. So thank you very much. No, I learned and I really appreciate what took place this evening. We are so thankful. Thank you very much to both of you, and to Toki Mohotoji. Thank you very much. So, to all those who participated online, we'd like to say thank you very much for taking part on today's program, episode 2 of the program, Uhambo, My Journey. So I'd like to say thank you very much to Director of Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, to Mr. Kiran Singh and Sristi Harinaran. We'd like to say thank you very much to all of you. Have a wonderful day.